The running back position was once one of the most prestigious in all of professional football. Back in the day, that was one of the most important positions on the team. Guys like Jim Brown, Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, all-time running backs who impacted the game at a high level. And that was largely due to what they did on the field and largely due to the position that they played. And it was a lot more run-oriented back then. And as time went on, especially now in the modern NFL, we see offenses tailored more and more towards the pass. And that position that so many all-time greats played, teams seem to value it less year by year. But there are two guys, and they are playing football tonight. Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley that are making the running back position. They are headlining it, and they are having it experience a true renaissance. Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. And today we are talking about the NFL's running back renaissance. So to look at how these guys are impacting the game right now, we have to look at how we got here. And I touched on this a little bit in the introduction, but there was a time where running back was a very important position. There's some real all-time greats that used to play the running back position. Guys like Barry Sanders, who I didn't mention earlier, and so many more. And these guys would have not just for 3 or 4 good seasons, but they would have continuous long stretches of good play. And their teams would trust in them to continually lead the offense season after season. And that was huge because you can have a couple good seasons as a professional athlete, but when people look back on you and you try to become an all-time great, what really matters is your consistency and your longevity. There are so many examples of one-season wonders in any sport. But these running backs back in the day, they got all the opportunity. Teams really trusted in them. They leaned on the run for their offense. And as a result, these running backs put up production year by year, proved that they could handle the workload. They could be a workhorse for that team and have success in doing so. And then as time goes on, the NFL becomes more pass-oriented, and teams always love to follow the winners. And you look at recent dynasties. You had the 49ers led by Joe Montana. Then after that, you had the New England Patriots led by Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time. And now you have the Kansas City Chiefs, led by one of the most talented quarterbacks ever, Patrick Mahomes. All of these teams have had so much success at the highest level, and they've done it through the air. And other teams, we see this in the NBA as well, any professional sports league, they're going to copy the winners most and try to copy that formula and see if it can bring them success in their own right. Teams are always going to follow the winners. And we see that in the NFL too. Coaches also bring in the air raid offense as of more recently from college to the NFL level, bringing just another new addition to coaching schemes that benefit the pass, that are oriented towards an aerial attack. And so now the running backs that teams used to rely on so much, teams are using them less, and they're placing less trust in them as well. Because if there's anything about the general modern running back and how the public perceives them, how the media perceives them, how NFL teams perceive them, there are 2 major values in terms of how we look at them. Maybe 3. You can stretch out a little bit. So there is the idea that they decline rapidly with age, and as years go by, as they become older, they are going to be significantly worse. The idea that because of that, they are not worth extending. They are not worth anything past that rookie contract. You can always find something better. And the idea that when they do decline, it is not going to be gradual. It's not going to be season by season. They're going to have a good season, and then they're going to fall off the next. Those have been the 3 values in terms of how franchises have really perceived running backs as of late. But there are 2 guys who are breaking that mold right now, in Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. We'll start off with Derrick Henry. This is someone who is 30 years old right now, and he was already a late bloomer as a running back. He didn't have his first 1,000-yard season until year 3. So that's already breaking the mold of typically they might peak during their rookie contract. Because it was the exact opposite for Derrick Henry. He got better with time as the Titans gave him more opportunities. From 2019 on, he had 1,500 yards, then he had a 2,000-yard season, Then he was on pace for 2,000 the next until he got injured. Then he had 1,500 again. And then he had a slight down year at 1,100. And now he's back with the Ravens this time and having one of his best rushing seasons yet. So that's our next point here is he's on a new team now. He's with the Baltimore Ravens. And the Tennessee Titans, they moved on from him. They wanted younger because, as mentioned previously, Derrick Henry is 30 years old. But at the end of the day, what makes Derrick Henry special is the fact that, especially with his bruising play style, he is able to continuously have a high workload at the age that he's at. Because you don't see that often with a modern NFL running back. Typically, they are going after their rookie contract. They especially don't last till 30. But Derrick Henry, and also just being incredibly consistent and having really high peaks as well. He's been both consistent and had a great prime back in the 2,000-yard season. Almost had another one that year after. He has been consistent, and he has also just put up great numbers. And as a result, he's going to have all-time running back numbers when we look back on him in NFL history. He is a first-ballot Hall of Famer, and his numbers are comparable with some of the greats. And because he went to the Baltimore Ravens team, and they trust him. The Tennessee Titans did not trust Derrick Henry at 29 years old. He goes to a new team, and he's having one of his best seasons yet. And that's something you don't see a lot of the time with these running backs, especially in the modern NFL. He goes to a new team, and typically that is when you can really see one decline, but he has done just the opposite. He has been just as good as he has been as the Tennessee Titan for the Baltimore Ravens now. And then we move on to Saquon Barkley. He's a little bit younger than Derrick Henry, but this is also his second team. And the New York Giants, this is a good example of a team focusing on the pass more. They paid Daniel Jones a 4-year, $160 million contract extension. And that created some sacrifices that the team had to utilize to just create cap room. And they lose the rights to Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley becomes a division rival Philadelphia Eagle. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, their expectations with this were really the fact that DeAndre Swift had a great season in Philadelphia last year, but then he goes to Chicago, and Philadelphia is just looking for someone to fill that hole because DeAndre Swift, you can argue it's because of the O-line why his production was so great the year before, but the Philadelphia Eagles, they need someone to at least fill that 1,000-yard production that DeAndre Swift had. But Saquon has gone above and beyond that. And at least before this Baltimore game, he was on pace to break Eric Dickerson's record for rushing yards in an NFL season. Saquon has been great, and he has rejuvenated this Philadelphia Eagles offense. This is a team that collapsed in the second half of last season. They start off 10-1. They go 1-6 to finish the year and lose in the first round. And not just lose, they get blown out by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is a team that kind of tried to lean on the pass a little bit too much, really, in terms of what their actual strengths are, because Jalen Hurts, while he can be a good pocket passer at times, what he does best is as a scrambler. So you bring in a great running back, that's going to help that even more. And Saquon has just been a perfect fit with the Philadelphia Eagles. But just talking about these two guys and their examples and what they've done on these new teams, what does this mean for the future? How is this a true renaissance for the running back? And it's not only because they are breaking the standards, but they are setting the tone for what more running backs can do with more trust and more opportunity, as well as how the run game can fit into a modern passing offense and still be really efficient and really impactful for winning football games. First off, they set the precedent that, at 30 years old, Derrick Henry is still playing some of the best football of his career. And he is a bruising running back. He's a power back at its finest. And so in doing that, he is a running back that is consistently going to take hits going up the middle. And what he does with that, to still be able to play at such a high level at the age he's at, why can't smaller running backs do the same thing? Running backs that are going to go to the outside more, that are going to have perhaps less wear and tear on their bodies, just going to the outside instead of run out the middle every play. Why can't they do the same thing? And part of that is just the fact that Derrick Henry has such a huge frame that he is able to take those hits, but at the same time, if running back, albeit smaller, is taking less hits, That's going to bode well for their longevity. And so other teams can see what Derrick Henry is doing at age 30 and decide, hey, maybe we can stick on and stay with our running back for a little bit longer and have trust in them even as they get older until they really do decline. Instead of just having a preconceived notion that they are going to decline soon. And that goes back to Derrick Henry being a late bloomer as well. Because so often if a running back, after their rookie contract, they're perceived as not being worth much more value. But Derrick Henry got even better in the years since that rookie contract. And with the New York Giants and Saquon Barkley going over to the Philadelphia Eagles, it's a show that sometimes you do have to trust your running back, especially if they've been performing at a high level, more than your quarterback, especially if that quarterback has just been mediocre at best. Because the Giants, they invested their stock in Daniel Jones. But at the end of the day, Daniel Jones is not a guy that's going to raise the talent of his teammates. He is at his best when he's got guys like Saquon Barkley around him to take the load off of him. And in losing Saquon, you also lose the production from your quarterback. And Jones has been released from the Giants now. And if the Giants had just paid Saquon as well, or even just looked at other quarterback options instead of just moving on from their running back as just the first logical choice in their mind, then they wouldn't be in this situation. But above all, it sets a precedent for how the running game is not directly competing with the passing game. These two things can coexist. Lamar Jackson is leading the league in passing yards. Derrick Henry is number 2 in rushing yards. The Eagles are very run-oriented, but they also have a lot of weapons that they can throw to and that they trust Jalen Hurts to throw to. And having a great running back that the defense has to focus on, that opens up your passing game via the play action. And just the defense has to focus. They have to respect that run game. They have to pay attention to it each and every play, especially for the top-tier running backs. Snap in, snap out, they have to pay attention to them. And that opens up a lot of doors for you to get a big chunk play through the passing game via the play action when a team has to respect the run. So, and we're seeing with the production from these teams that they can coexist very well, especially in the case of the Ravens with Lamar's passing greatness this season. Probably his best passing season that he's ever had. And that's with the addition of this elite running back now. When you typically think that might hinder Lamar's production through the air, it's helping even more. So these two things can absolutely coexist. And I think as more teams see this, especially if one of these teams goes on to win the Super Bowl and is just really successful in the coming years, which is absolutely a possibility with how these teams are looking. These are two juggernauts, two heavyweights right now. Other teams could be more in line to follow that and listen to these precedents that are being set by Derrick Henry and the Ravens and Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. And the running back position, we're seeing what these two guys can do right now, but it's what this can lead to in the future that is the true NFL running back renaissance. And Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry are the ones that are truly putting it on display right now. For so long, it was perceived as a position of minimal value that was very replaceable, but these guys are breaking all the standards in the modern NFL. And once again, leading to a true renaissance for the running back position. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you for listening.